In this video, we have Duke Does Amazon with us. He has been selling on Amazon for a long time now. If you want to hear what he's up to, then feel free to stick around. So in this video, we have Duke Does Amazon. And if you want to just give a little bit of a background, kind of who you are, what you do, what your business model is.
Yeah, so I've been selling on Amazon. May is actually my 3-year anniversary. I started during the pandemic because I have another business. Actually, I'm wearing a shirt, so I'll do a shameless plug. I have a brewery touring business, and it was halted during COVID. I had always bought and sold things as long as time, from houses to college textbooks to a foosball table on the side of the road. So during COVID, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to dabble back into the buying and selling. I want to get with the modern times. Went on YouTube, learned about Amazon FBA. And I'm really bummed I didn't learn about it earlier, but you can't go back. So I was in South Florida, did retail arbitrage for about 2 years. And South Florida is incredible for retail arbitrage. It's a very populated area. There's a ton of stores. And so it did really well. And then last year, about a year ago, I moved to Asheville, North Carolina. Still like a mid-sized city, but not nearly as condensed or congested in a small amount of area. RA wasn't the same. And also, I wanted to get away from physically going to the stores. I always say I'm not above it. I did it for years. I still do a little. So I went cold turkey about a year ago when we moved to OA, which has presented a series of its own trials and tribulations. But that's where we are today. I focus primarily on online arbitrage, and I've been doing Amazon FBA for about 3 years total.
And so just a thought that I thought of, I've been listening to some of your interviews and you kind of got your start like through Hustle Buddies, right?
Yep.
What was that like?
I think it's so funny. So many people I know went through them. And I just kind of have this theory that they're great. Don't get me wrong. They put out very good information. They're very personable, knowledgeable. They know how to curate a community. I think a lot of people were like myself and found themselves looking up FBA during COVID. And they had been consistently putting stuff out there and they had their Facebook group. So I think the funnel was getting bigger and there was only so many people doing it prior to that, and those that did really saw a huge spike. And so that was great to be able to ask people questions, to relay on people. I found that I kind of quote unquote outgrew it quickly, but it was a phenomenal place to start. And it was really nice knowing that there's so many people out there, and I sell this to other sellers. If there's any issue that arises, someone else has already faced it, overcame it, and is probably willing to help you do the same.
Yeah, I just mentioned that because I think when basically for me, I started retail arbitrage because like the book business, I got hit with those restock limits back around 2 years ago. And that was a big problem for me. So I was like, oh, let's do retail arbitrage. And I think Hustle Buddies was one of the first people I came across, like really good proof of concept of like, oh, you actually can find stuff in stores very consistently in like the grocery category. Like he loves his like seasonal like candies and all that jazz. What were some of the big inflection points for you in your Amazon store? Because like you go from like flipping foosball tables on the side of the road to,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that's semi-advanced actually. I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe, but like, what are your sales like today? Like, aren't you pushing like 80K in sales a month?
Yeah, so and actually let me just touch on that foosball story. It's pretty funny. I was in college with my buddy who had a pickup truck. In our neighborhood, somebody put out a foosball table on the side of the road. I'm 35 to give some context, okay? So like maybe FBA was around and stuff and but like this was also a big item. So I told my buddy I was like, "Hey, I saw this foosball table. I know we can sell it." At the time Craigslist was the play, not even Facebook Marketplace. I'll split it with you literally $50 within like an hour. And that was one of those moments I was like, yeah, so that's just the foosball table. As far as current day, I pushed 80K December, which was my highest month, Q4. I am consistently, I would say like right now, 50 to 60K. And I'm actually in the process of securing some more funds to really push that because I find that I'm at a place that capital is my only restriction. I have the time, I have the skill set, I've put in the reps. It's just that. So that's kind of where I'm at in the journey, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, $50,000 a month. Like, That's a lot. Thinking
Yeah.
about like 3 years ago, like I know for me, maybe 4 years ago when I was just starting, I was selling on like eBay and stuff. And I was just like, man, if I could get like multiple sales a day, like this would be sick. This would be amazing. And now it's just
Yeah.
like if you go through a day and you don't sell $1,000 in a day, you're like, what happened today?
I know. It's interesting. I think about this a lot. We become, and this is probably just a bad human trait in general, but it is what it is. You become so immune to the new norm so quickly, right? Speaking of hustle buddies, I remember Nate, the guy that runs it, would suggest Seller Snap, which is an expensive repricer for people. By the way, looking back, I feel like there was probably cheaper, just as good alternatives. But he was like, don't even think about it unless you're doing 20K a month in sales. I'm like, people do 20K a month in sales? And I was like, holy cow, right? And then you do it. And then you start to network and meet other people. And it just completely lifts the limiting belief. And the more you do it, you just get it. Like it's okay, this is very attainable. I understand. So
Yeah, exactly. What would you say some of the like the biggest like jumps and like things that made a big difference for you to get from the beginning to like kind of where you are now?
I'm like a broken record when it comes to this. I've always believed this, but this really has confirmed it for me. There's this formula that is as simple as it can be that I have that's basically action plus consistency over a long enough a period of time. So think about that. You start something, you keep doing it for an extended period of time. There's no example of that you won't win. Now, winning is subjective to everyone, success is subjective to everyone. But the bottom line is the point I'm making is consistency, whether that's committing to 1 hour of sourcing a day, 2 hours, 3 hours, X amount of a spend every single week, whatever it is. I always say consistency over intensity. And that is the name of the game with Amazon, especially because you can't predict exactly when there might be an opportunity today that you can spend $5,000 at, 40% ROI. And tomorrow you might have to scrap your way to spend $100, but you're not going to have one without the other if you're not showing up all the time. So consistency to me in this especially. Another thing to me is I've really a major inflection point. I guess I've always heard this and thought it, but I really felt it firsthand is the power of deep work. And I'm not trying to be like a guru, poaching stuff online because you hear that quite a bit, but I'm a morning person and I'm not saying you should be or anyone else. But I noticed that when I'm locked in 2 to 3 hours of sourcing, first thing in the morning, a coffee, I worked out, maybe got up at 5:30. Those 3 hours can be as productive as 8 hours of not focused work. So deep work to me has been incredibly impactful. Another thing is networking with other Amazon sellers. There's someone in particular I have a really good relationship with, and we are sharing leads all the time. So think of the best VA in the world, basically, and we're both acting as each other's. He knows what he's doing. I know what I'm doing. We do separate things, and we're literally just saying, "Hey, go buy this," and here, go buy this, right? So that's huge. Tracking your numbers, tracking your spending budgets, tracking your profit, your return on investment, your returns, items like I keep track of all of my products from where I bought them, the ASIN. Now, I don't go crazy with it, but even if something doesn't have enough profit, I'll save it. This week's a great example. So many stores, 15% cashback, Mother Day sales were going on. Once or twice a year, these things can pay off. And I can go on and on and on, but those are some that really come to mind to me. I don't use extravagant softwares. I think another thing is just realizing you have to be willing to do things or find ways to source that the average person isn't willing to do or doesn't know how to do in order to achieve results that the average person isn't achieving, right?
Is that why you think it seems like a lot of people say like, oh, apparel or Nike is so oversaturated? Like, do you feel like that's kind of related? Because it almost feels like most people who make content about, oh, wait, like just talk about apparel. And it's just
Yeah.
like everyone knows how to do source from those couple sites. But like if you were to like try and source from like Cabela's or something, like there's not like a framework that like people.
Totally. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think Nike is very attractive to trying to lure somebody into your content, to be honest. I can't think of any real reputable Amazon seller that isn't trying to do that. And I mean this, like I'm not bitter or throwing shade, I'm just being honest, right? That is trying to provide value by showcasing Nike, right? I can't think of that instance. the bottom line is you have to ask yourself when sourcing, how easy was it for a competitive seller
Mhm.
to also find this product at this price point? So if Nike has a 25% sale going on and everybody knows about Nike, especially newbies, and it's on the second, you type in a keyword and it's there, why would you think that that's not going to tank in price, supply and demand? Completely agree that I like to try to find off sites. Yeah, I mean, Nike is
You don't
just a
have to
great
go into
example.
so much
Everybody knows of it.
detail, but
Say that again. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
you don't have to like be like, yeah, I shop here.
Yeah. No, totally. I will not do that. I've put in too much work to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nike's a great example. It's a low-hanging fruit. It's relatable. People see people buying all these shoes, clothes, Nike, and thinking they're making $1 million because Nike's a, quadrillion-dollar company. I make a lot more money probably selling the off stuff that doesn't get returned that a fraction of the amount of people know how to find.
I also wanted to touch on like some of those inflection points that you were talking about, like actually keeping track of your numbers, actually keeping track of the products that you source. That's a whole different step of like actually keeping track of the products that are like near wins, but like not quite, but like could be wins. Like a lot of people, they just want to source, and they don't think about like, all right, like this is how much I need to spend this month. This is how much I like to do. This is how much potential profit I need to send in
Mm.
every single month. Like actually keeping track of the products. I find that super important. I'm just curious for myself, honestly, how do you prioritize and keep track of all of your leads if you're keeping that much detail? Because like for me, we do the same thing. Like whenever we purchase anything, whether it's like one unit or like thousands of dollars, like we keep track of like everything that we buy, ASIN, like what we think we're going to sell it for, how many we think we could sell in a month, etc. And we like have tried to come up with like systems to prioritize to actually like be able to like continue to prioritize the best stuff. Like how do you go about that? Do you kind of just organize
Sure.
a site or?
Yes. And before I do, because I don't want to trust my memory, let me ask you a question that you mentioned. So you said, and I like that you go based on projected profit. What are you basing that off of? How are you keeping track of that at the time of sending it in? Like, do you use inventory labs type of thing? Or like when you buy something at the time of purchase, are you saying, I'm estimating this amount in sales or profit?
Basically what we do is at the time of purchase, we kind of look at the last like year of the keep and be like, this is a price where like this is kind of like the lowest price that we realistically think we're going to have to sell this for, but we'll list it higher, of course. And so let's say it's like $170 is like the base price, but we're going to list it at like 210 or something. And we bought it for like 95 or something. Say the potential profit is like if we bought it at 95, sold for 170, whatever that shows up in the calculator. That would be
Okay.
a potential profit. How would you go about that?
I like that. First off, as far as tracking, I don't want to make it seem like I'm not like this person that loves Excel sheets and like dives in and gets enjoyment out of that. To me, something that's become very clear to me is that you're going to hear for a lot of the term of go wide, not deep when you're new. And I believe that wholeheartedly because you want to mitigate risk. And if it's a long-term play, test things out. Oh, I bought this unique Keepa chart. Yeah, I got that right or I got that wrong. And this is why. And those 5 units don't matter in the big scheme of things. But for me, something that's become very clear is you don't need 1,000 ASINs. Like if you are proficient in, let's say 100, right? But you're better at those 100 than anyone else selling them. You know the exact sites that are gonna, the exact codes, the exact sites, when Rakuten's great for those coupon codes that maybe the average person doesn't know, how to get special coupon codes, stuff like that. If you own those, that can be worth its weight in gold. And so I preface with that to say, when you do research on a product, whether you buy it or not, you've already done 95% of the legwork, minus sending it to a prep center or prepping and packing, and then repricing basically, right? And so my thing is, especially because I use a prep center, I have to already copy and paste the ASIN, the SKU. I want to know what I paid for it. I want to know the site, the date, the order for reconciliation purposes as well. So let's say I went through something and you know what, there's just not enough meat on the bone today. I'm going to save that in a separate column with a link to the site that I think's the best because now I can literally go through 100 items like that once a month and it'll take me 10 minutes and I would be so surprised if a handful of those didn't work out, right? And so it goes back to one, I've already done the hard part. Two, who else is going to be doing that? Not the majority of my competition, right? So that gives me a competitive edge. But yeah, I mean, simple. I mean, as far as the columns go, ASIN, SKU, date, where, price. Maybe if there was like a huge sale going on, so next year I can revisit it in my notes column, but nothing so above and beyond like the very basic information.
Yeah, we don't like sit here and just want to like be in Excel sheets all day. Like the point of
Right.
it is to like optimize so that our hourly goes up, because like
Exactly.
we can be so much more efficient if we have something like that where we can check it for 10 minutes once a month and like actually pull some really good stuff.
Totally. I think also what really got me to do that last year, Q4 was my first Q4 when I was like pretty much an OA seller. And I was like, holy cow, between November and December, almost every single product that I've sold on Amazon is probably going to be 30% off at some point in time. So if I save this one item and I get to sell 10 of it just because of Q4, again, that extra 10 seconds to put it in a Google Sheet or Excel, the return on that 10 seconds is through the roof. I've already done the hard part by looking it up. That's a sunk cost at that point, you know? So it really adds up because you look at so many products as a seller that even if 1% come through down the road because you charted it, it's going to be through the roof ROI.
Exactly. I feel like in this interview, I keep like hammering at like these niche things that not a lot of people are talking about. So the thing that I was thinking was actually like taking feedback from the purchases that you've made. So like buying a weird 𝗬𝗂, for example, I have been doing this year where I'll buy a weird 𝗬𝗂 and I'm like, is an expensive unit of this actually going to sell? And so I'll set a reminder 6 weeks in advance. Like I thought this was a weird 𝗬𝗂 graph. There was no rank, no offer tab information. Did it sell? Or I'll set something for like 2 months to see if it sells. How has that been for you in like learning and like actually learning from your orders?
Yeah, so let me ask you a question too. When you say a reminder, what are you using to remind yourself, by the way?
I use scheduled. So like
Okay.
it's basically just like a calendar app, and you can like basically like let's say I have a meeting or something. I just write it down, and then you can, let's say like I bought something today and I was like, yeah, I don't know if this is gonna sell, but I'm gonna try one. I'll set a reminder for like June 16th or something, or like
Okay,
July
cool. Yeah, I
1st.
got to check that out. I think that's a great idea. So for me, beyond the super beginner stage, right, I started to realize was that there's a lot of other context clues that could help paint the picture, and sales rank is just a context clue. So for instance, maybe something hasn't been in stock for whatever reason for 6 months and nobody's jumped on the listing. Initial sales rank could be 500,000, right? But then you can go into 𝗬𝗂 and look at data and offers and history and see what happened when this was in stock, or what price did it typically sell or for whatever reason, the sales rank just stopped point blank 2 years ago, right? Review trends. So I'm looking at all these other context clues. But when you do that for the first couple of times, you don't do it with confidence. It's just, I hope my theory is correct. And then you do enough of these little test buys here, test buys there. Hey, this is a new 𝗬𝗂 chart. To me, worst case scenario, let's say I still make $5 if it sells for the lowest it's ever sold for. Best case, 200% ROI, something like that, right? So you do a test buy, you test your theory, and let's say it works out. Well, now you know, oh yeah, sales rank is just a context clue. I was right. This tab helps with this, and the reviews help with this. And now I'm also trying to think, this brand, I saw a lot of that. So it's a popular brand. And when I go on sites, there's not a lot in stock. So all these combinations, light bulb, light bulb, light bulb, right? Now I will say sometimes you do that and then it draws attention and other people jump on it. I don't lose sleep over that because to me, everything with Amazon is a long-term play. I've just proven to myself and built the confidence that the next time I see a chart like this, I'll go deeper, right?
Yeah,
And so
you can absolutely destroy on some of those sometimes.
yeah, that's just kind of my thought on like, I love atypical 𝗬𝗂 charts in a nutshell because the typical ones, everybody that's halfway decent knows how to read.
Yeah, so much competitive advantage there. I'm curious. We usually, a lot of people in podcasts ask like, we'll ask this question too, like if you're just wanting to start out, like what are some action steps that you would take to get to the next level? But kind of for those people who are kind of in the like maybe 5K to 20K a month range, and you want to take it to the next level, what would be a piece of advice for those types of people who are in that category?
Yeah. So let me tell you the first thing that comes to mind, even though it's an indirect answer. Let me just get my opportunity to plug this. If you're doing 5 to 20 and you have a other job, keep that job. I think that's going to be your quickest way to be able to scale this business. That's a mountain. Is that the saying? Side of a hill I'm willing to die on, whatever the saying is, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazon, I don't want to go too far off topic, but basically the bottom line is this. The quickest way I think to scale is to not have to take money out of the business so you can reinvest the profits. One of the ways that you can do that is by having something else pay your bills. Okay, so that's 1A. The other thing I would say is before I say that is, and I've thought about this a lot recently, people talk about scaling, and we all think that scaling is synonymous with growing your sales. But really, profit is what should be scaling, right?
Yeah.
You should be increasing your profit. That's the ultimate goal by scaling, unless there's a different model, whatever. And what I say by that is, I say that to say, if I'm doing 20 grand a month at 10% margin, I would land both at $2,000 profit, right? And you can risk way less capital. You don't need more capital to grow. You've spent half the amount in theory and you make the same amount. So I would say that before you worry about just growing your sales, worry about increasing your margin, especially if capital is tight. The only advantage to spending more capital is that cashback opportunity. But if you're at that stage of the game, it's not going to make or break you anyway. Okay. But just to play devil's advocate, if I were to say going from, let's say you kept the same margin, you're at 20 or 5 to 20, or want to go up, I think it just comes down to reps. I mean, the thing with Amazon is that, and the amount of time that you put into, right? That consistency thing. There's so much opportunity out there. Every day I do this, there are so many categories, brands, and sites that I haven't even scratched the surface on that people are selling hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on. Okay. So it's not a lack of opportunity out there. It's a matter of getting to a point where you can know how to profitably source those. How do you get better at anything? It's just reps, right? The more Keepa charts you read, the better decision making. You're going to be more confident. You're going to make more money and you can reinvest that. So I don't think there's any winning formula. And for me, interviewing a lot of people, nobody is doing anything so above and beyond what the next person is doing. They've just put in the reps and they're committed to it and consistently sourcing. Same softwares. Keepa doesn't go from level 1 to level 10 overnight. Like, it's once you're good at reading a Keepa chart, you're good at reading a Keepa chart. And that's like the name of the game. So just consistency and reps. Like, it's boring. The answer is boring. OA could be boring, but there's no secret sauce. Just you got to put it in.
I think I was watching one of your videos recently. You were talking a lot about like how like you used to reverse source a lot and then you used to do this a lot and you used to do this a lot. But then now that you know how to do all those things, combining all those things together with the reps has really like taken things to the next level. And I totally agree with that. Like once you get the Keepa skill together, like if you do regular online arbitrage, like maybe learn how to use a catch-all, like maybe learn how to do sales, maybe learn how to determine like, is this sale actually like, is it going on too long that people are going to get way too much inventory, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of different situations with that, put it all together and you get 1 step better, 2 steps better, 3 steps better. So now what would your advice be to someone who like really hasn't sold that much on Amazon? Maybe they're on eBay, maybe they're not even on eBay yet. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say to anyone is that if you're in the game of like a long-term play, I think it could be great. And it's funny because I was even thinking about this. If I stop selling on Amazon tomorrow, just my skill set now, I would save hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of my lifetime just knowing how to use cashback and discounts and stuff like that. When people say that they make 10,000 profit on Amazon, I'm not saying that people aren't doing that. They're doing that and will beyond. It doesn't get reflected the same way that a paycheck does because it's a very capital and inventory intensive business. Okay. So I share all that to say, just it's not going to happen overnight. Okay. But it could very well happen and pretty quickly, but not overnight. I would say, to me, I'm such an advocate for starting with retail arbitrage. Whatever has the path of least resistance to starting is good. Retail arbitrage, anybody can basically go to a store, their house, tomorrow, today, right now, start scanning things and kind of get some validation or begin. You know, it's so easy to be juiced up after watching a video or something, then you fall asleep, you're different tomorrow. Retail arbitrage is almost instant, right? So I would say set yourself up for the path of least resistance. Retail arbitrage is a great place to start. For one, there's a lot of advantages to it, like you're only competing sometimes with people in your area, even though there's nationwide demand, but it's the accessibility. Prove the concept to yourself, get out there, start. You don't need a whole lot to do it. And, you know, I know it's cliche, but taking action, I mean, that's really it. And I think retail arbitrage is the easiest way to take action.
Yeah, and like you can get out there and actually look at products today. If you want to do that with the Amazon Seller app, you'll need to start your Amazon Seller account and actually get approved. So you might as well go ahead and get started with that now because it does take a week or two to get approved. But you could always download the eBay app. You could look at Facebook Marketplace and see what people are listing items there for. You could go to the free section of Craigslist and get a free foosball table and sell it for $50 split with your friend.
Yeah.
Like you could do that today, especially if it's Saturday, because people do a lot of that stuff on Saturday. But
Totally.
Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. Instagram, Duke Does Amazon, YouTube, Duke Does Amazon. I'm on Twitter at Duke Does Amazon, but it's really just to take screenshots to put on Instagram.
That's the best.
But yeah, Duke Does Amazon for the social stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Take care.
Yeah, thanks for having me.